Hey guys, I'm Dev, and I'm pretty sure The Incredibles 2 will be worth the 14-year wait, but ever since the Disney purchase in 2006, fans have been worried about Pixar sliding into mediocrity with a string of soulless sequels, and I can see where they're coming from. If you include The Incredibles 2 and the upcoming Toy Story 4, Pixar has produced 8 follow-ups to their classic films. Now, some of these movies are straight-up masterpieces that outshine the originals, and some are, hit the brakes on this one, Cars 2. Still, Pixar's track record is better than most, so today we're looking at what makes a Pixar sequel good. One common complaint about sequels in general is that there's no good reason for them to exist, that there are cash-ins that just retread on the same old ground as the original, while somehow forgetting what made the first film work.
Therefore, what I'm saying, if I'm saying anything, is welcome back.
Pixar can be guilty of this, but when their sequels succeed, it's because they stand their ground. After the shocking success of Toy Story in 1995, Pixar went full steam ahead on the production of A Bug's Life. Just as they were ramping up, Toy Story creator and alleged creep John Lasseter approached Disney to pitch a sequel starring Woody, Buzz, and the gang. Disney loved the idea, but there was one catch. They wanted it to release straight to video and produce it with their much cheaper TV animation department. But before Toy Story 2 could join the hollow ranks of Belle's Enchanted Christmas and Return of Jafar, production wrapped on A Bug's Life, freeing up the focus of Pixar's legendary brain trust. They held a screening of the work-in-progress Toy Story 2 and were so horrified by what they saw, they scrapped the whole thing and started from scratch. The average turnaround time for a Pixar movie is 4 years, but they only had 9 months to make Toy Story 2. It took a huge toll on the crew, and a lot of them worked 36-hour days to meet the deadline, and at one point the entire movie was almost deleted by accident, but luckily one employee on maternity leave had a backup at home.
Thank goodness you're all right.
Still, the end result was absolutely worth it. Pixar's commitment to quality resulted in a stunning sequel that arguably outshines the original. It's the Empire Strikes Back of the Toy Story trilogy, no thanks to Disney.
I'll never give in. You killed my father.
No, Buzz. I am your father.
Toy Story 2 kicked off years of frustrations between the two companies. Pixar was mad that Disney owned all the rights to their characters, and Disney wanted Pixar to produce merch-friendly follow-ups instead of weird movies about foodie rats or mute robots. Actual, what do they call it, Moose? Is it? Art, yes.
So, how long is this gonna take?
You can't rush art.
To that end, Disney formed Circle 7 Animation, a studio devoted solely to pumping out Pixar sequels. Obviously, Pixar wasn't happy with the idea. Internally, they referred to Circle 7 as Pixart. 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 Like, you know.
Pixar not.
Insults aside, Disney had all the power, so they greenlit 3 movies: Toy Story 3, Monsters Inc. 2, Trouble in Scaradise, and Finding Nemo 2. None of them would ever come to light though, thankfully, at least not in their original form. That's because Disney straight up bought Pixar in 2006 and made John Lasseter the creative director in charge of all their animation. His first order of business was to close Circle 7. Can we get a round of applause for that? And let Pixar tell the stories they wanted to tell. Pixar has extremely high storytelling standards, and their best sequels come from genuine desire to move their characters forward. The original direct-to-video Toy Story 2 had a similar plot to the film, but there was no suspense, no emotional core there. When Woody was offered the choice to sit in mint condition on a museum shelf or escape back to Andy's room, the answer was obvious. Woody had no reason to doubt himself, no internal conflict. He could have just said, "F this shit, I'm out." So Pixar came up with Weezer, Jessie, and her heartbreaking song. They created an emotional arc for Woody. He had to choose between his love for Andy and his fear of abandonment, and that theme would play out in the third movie's tear-jerking conclusion. Back to the shallow ideas from Circle 7, the original Toy Story 3 was going to be a globe-trotting adventure where Woody and the gang rescue a defective Buzz after he gets recalled to Taiwan. Ooh, so sad I missed that one. The scope and scale was increased, but it wasn't about anything. Just like the original Monsters Inc. 2, it was going to be a wacky adventure where Mike and Sully get trapped in the human world, but Pixar scrapped it in favor of a prequel that taught kids it's okay to get expelled from college.
You know, there is still one way we can work at a scare company. They're always hiring in the mailroom.
Monsters U was about how sometimes your plans don't work out the way you want them to, and it gave us a ton of insight into Mike and Sully's relationship in Monsters Inc. It's one of the weaker Pixar movies, but at least it's still good, unlike, wait for it, Cars 2. The Cars series was John Lasseter's passion, just below, allegedly forcing unwanted hugs on his employees. But after the awesome opening scene, the movie spends the next 2 hours on a shitty spy adventure starring Mater.
I knew I should have done. Carry on.
Thanks, old boy.
They reined things back a little bit for Cars 3, but by then the damage was done. Turns out you can't build a whole sequel around an annoying comic relief character, at least until Finding Dory proved otherwise. Granted, a Dory-centric film is a lot more appealing on paper than a Larry the Cable Guy, as a truck, as James Bond film.
Who are you?
My name's Mater.
I must be dreaming.
But they did so much more with her story. They turned her amnesia from a funny character trait into a lifelong struggle and set Dory on a journey to overcome her childhood trauma, piece together her past, and reunite with her parents in a scene that's up there with anything from, well, Up.
Hello. I'm
Dory! Oh, my baby. Let me look at you. I'm never letting you go again.
Finding Dory might not live up to the huge bar set by Nemo, but it's a solid movie and probably a lot better than the quick cash-in Disney had planned. Because that's the final thing that sets Pixar sequels apart. They take their time. The Incredibles came out 14 years ago. It predates the iPhone and the Xbox 360, not to mention the entire MCU. A lot has changed since 2004, and as moviegoers, we've changed too. We've grown up with Pixar movies, and they've honestly grown up with us. When we first saw Toy Story, a lot of us were kids around the same age as Andy. We were enchanted by the idea of our favorite playthings having a life of their own. 15 years later, we were headed out for college, about to face the real world and feeling conflicted about leaving our childhoods behind, just like Andy. After all these years, Pixar films are as big a part of pop culture as Star Wars.
I'm sure you are.
And if they wanted to, they could hit pause for a decade, churn out a sequel, and make $1 billion on nostalgia alone. But Pixar isn't interested in that. Their sequels take a while, and that's because they're waiting for the right story and the right cultural moment. 15 years after Toy Story, the original audience was ready for a tale about growing up and how leaving the past behind doesn't mean you love it any less.
Thanks, guys.
13 years after Finding Nemo, mental illness is no longer as stigmatized, and it's certainly not a joke, which allowed Pixar to turn a one-note character like Dory into a compelling, almost tragic protagonist. And now, 14 years after the first Incredibles, Pixar and Brad Bird can comment on everything that's happened in the real world since 2004, even if the sequel begins the minute after the first film ends. From the rise of superheroes and cinematic universes to changing family dynamics and the hurdles women face in the workplace, 2018 is the perfect cultural moment to dive back into a world they created 14 years ago. But as excited as I am for Incredibles 2, it's the future I'm really looking forward to. After Toy Story 4, the company's next 5 movies will be all new IP, and I can't wait to see what they come up with next. Pixar's sequels are second to none, but they're only possible because of their original and incredible ideas. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. What's your favorite Pixar sequel? Do you like Finding Dory, or are you more of a Monsters U fan? Or have you hit a Wall-E and now you're finding yourself brave enough to say Cars 2 is up there with the incredible Toy Story sequels? Let us know in the comments below, and as always, please subscribe to NowThis Nerd. Thank you.